My name is Mark Zorn. I am uh, the head of cybersecurity for Marvel Studios, but that's my day job. I wear too many other hats. Um, so here are some of the other things that I do. I am the current chair of SMPTE Hollywood. I've been with SMPTE for at least 25 years, and I've kind of worked my way up, you might say. I've been a member of the conference committee for the annual technical conference for the last dozen years or so. And I co-chaired the conference last year, and I am uh, chairing slash co-chairing the conference again this year. I'm an associate member of the ASC, just woohoo, ASC. Um, just because of a lot of the work that I do with cinematographers and helping the ASC where I can. I've been part of the ACES team heading up the logo task force, um, doing education and training and the use of the logo itself. I'm a long-term member of way too many organizations to name. But the ones you might recognize are HPA, CDSA, IEEE, the Cloud Security Alliance. Like I said, I am head of cybersecurity for Marvel Studios, and I've been in security. Sorry, insecurity is not the right way to say it. I've been a security practitioner for um, just about 40 years now. And I'm one of the original authors of the MPAA best practices. So one of the things I want to do is frame the conversation a little bit. Uh, when we're talking about the future of cinema, I'm not talking so much on the theater side. I'm talking about the of art or technique of making motion pictures. Now, I don't know if you recognize the guy on the right with his face in the lens. He's the doctor from the STEM material, and he's a good friend, Stephen Shaw. So next. Okay. So just to move on kind of quickly, here are kind of the workflows that we've come to use or come to think of as part of the making process. We started with film. Then as we went to digital, we went to file-based. We started with digital intermediates where we were scanning to film to digital, and then we were doing outsourced post-production. And I say outsourced just because we are now employing third parties to do a lot of our the outsourced or the post-production that we used to do in-house. We'll talk about the private cloud, which is really your own data center that you're sharing out. The public cloud, the that's the ones you're fairly well versed with, like AWS or Azure or any number of those. Um, and that's kind of where we are at the moment, just between public cloud and just-in-time pipeline, where now we're starting to look at creating motion pieces and delivering them in one kind of fell swoop. And we're relying on supply chains to help kind of take pieces and then deliver them for distinct markets. And then we'll talk about adaptive real-time delivery. This is kind of one of my favorite favorite slides, just because it talks about the proximity of data, how close you control the data. So if you look on the left-hand side, if you're doing everything locally on a standalone system, what do you need a password for? What do you need file permissions? Why do you need um, anything that protects your data if nobody can get to the device you're using? So moving that direction, we used to have mainframes and shared compute space. Then we're going to a distributed model. A distributed model is now outsourcing some of your data, and then we're in the cloud now, where we are using resources somewhere on the other side of the world. So this is basically saying when it's closer to you, you don't need the security as much. When it's further away, the security mechanisms are everything. So one of the biggest changes in the industry with regard to security is when you're working on things in-house and then moving to outsourced. I'm tempted to say outhoused, but I'm not going to. And the difference is proprietary workflows versus standards and handling of your data by people you may or may not know. So the interchange formats used to be a big challenge, where if you were doing proprietary work, it would impede your ability to work with other people if they didn't follow the same standards. So standards are a big thing, especially for SMPTE, which is a standards organization. When you're working with other people, performance of moving the data and processing the data is important, and of course, security. So the content exchange becomes a big challenge when you're moving things back and forth if you want to control who gets to see your data. And we usually refer to that as a chain of custody or ownership. Now, one of the things before we move on is that as we evolve, as we're working through ways to handle our data, don't make giant changes in the way you handle your data immediately, because the production people hate that. I have many scars that show that. If you make revolutionary changes, they'll just say no, or they'll follow what they're used to. They'll say, hey, start the revolution on the next project. I've got a deadline. You know, the post-production folks don't want to hear about how you're changing what they do. So my philosophy is basically make incremental changes with every new project that you work on. And then the production folks will come along with you if you build up that trust over time. So this has a keyword on it that was the bane of my existence forever. Not physical media. Physical media I love. FTP. File transfer protocol. Terrible, terrible. Great when we were computer science students, not that great when you're trying to control your data when you're moving it to someone else. So we went to SFTP. So the secure file transfer protocol, but it's a point-to-point solution. So who in this room remembers DigiDelivery? Oh, we got one in the back. Okay. So DigiDelivery was a way of moving content between the studio and your outsourcers or anybody that's working on a film in a secure way. So it was a library system. It managed accounts. It moved data securely. And it went away because everybody that was using it had the same password. Nothing wrong with the technology. It was the way it was managed. And so DigiDelivery suddenly became like FTP. It was banned. But there was a big void because we needed to move our data. Does anybody remember WAMNet? No? Okay. Well, there were a whole bunch of, security or service providers that popped up and said, we'll manage your library. We'll manage the space that DigiDelivery, opened up. And then the person that helped create DigiDelivery then gave us the next in the evolution of it by giving us Aspera. Now, you guys have heard of Aspera, right? That's the one that most people use. Signiant is another one that a lot of people use. So, and I was trying to rush through at least the beginning of that, but now we're into the cloud. Now we're trying to figure out how we can collaborate with people seamlessly. So what we started with was um, everybody doing processing at the studio, and then the studio would share out pieces of it by creating their data center and connecting it to the outside world and calling it a private cloud. So it was beyond extranets and DMZs and partner networks. It was now a private cloud. So the on-prem data center was now servicing the rest of the world. Obviously, big security issues that go along with that. The location facilities were doing basically the same thing, except it wasn't on-prem. It was at some colo somewhere. So how do you collaborate safely from a private cloud? So what you do is you basically don't call it a cloud and move things back and forth the same way you've always done it. So it's not really cloud if it's your private data center. What about the public cloud? Now, you've probably heard this first phrase, the cloud is really just someone else's data center. Well, yeah, that's basically true. It's somewhere processing resources on the other side of the network. And it may be a private network, a private data center. It may be a big data center. It may be a bunch of data centers, and maybe any number of things. So where is your data? How many copies of your data are out there? Where is your control? So how is it stored? How's it protected? What about containers? Who can access the environment? How do we know that it's safe? How do I get my data back when I'm done using the cloud? That's a big one. And once I delete it from the cloud, is it actually no longer in the cloud? Short answer, it's still in the cloud. Yeah, don't trust anybody that says otherwise. Because one of the advantages of the cloud is that they do mass replication so that there's reliability and performance and that sort of thing. So they point to copies that are closer to where you're going to be using them. But those copies remain even after you mark them as deleted. So kind of thinking about that one slide of how proximate your data is. If it's close to you, you don't need the security that much. If it's far away from you, you need security like crazy. And the biggest thing that'll give you that level of control is encryption. So if you code your data, then only the people that have the key to uncode it or decrypt it can get to it. And that gives you a lot of advantages. So the strength of encryption determines how long it'll take to break it. The versatility of the cipher or the algorithm that you're using to code determines who can unlock it. That's where the handling instructions come in, is that you can encode things in the cipher. And then I'll talk about identity access management in a little bit. But it's always a game to stay ahead of what the vulnerabilities are, what the threats are, and the eventual compromises. But if you encrypt and you use strong encryption, you have more time, you have more control, and the best thing is that you can unmoor your data from the environment. You can encrypt something and send it out in the wild, and you don't have to control where it's stored. The neat thing is, unless you have the keys, unless you have the algorithm to break it, which, again, it's a matter of time rather than full control, but time is usually good enough. But the neat thing is that you can unmoor your data from your direct control. And that's kind of the crux of what I'm trying to preach today. So getting back to this same chart, If it's local, you don't need the security. If it's in the cloud, you need lots of security, and encryption is the key to being able to send it out where you don't need it, where you don't need to manage that control. Okay, who knows the line? Who knows the line? You're tearing me apart. Yeah, so we're tearing the data. we're sending the data out in the wild, but to get to the next level, we need to think of our data a little bit differently. If we're not directly controlling it, if we're not directly setting up the way that we are managing it, and we are encrypting it and then sending it out there, we can do so many other things by packaging the data in that way. Kind of like what we found new frontiers in mobile devices. Once we had instrumentation and other things that you could do out in the wild, now you can do some similar things with data. You can find a way to encrypt it into these discrete packages. I'm not talking about getting sex toys in the mail or anything, but they are discrete in that nobody knows what's in the package unless they can unpack it. Excuse me. So when we talk about data in the wild, we're talking this, it's kind of the code word, or the code word of the day is zero trust environment. If it's in the wild, you don't know what the environment is like. You don't care because it's packaged. So we can move packages through the network without worrying about controlling the environment. Now, I've said this a couple of times, but let that really sink in. What can you do if you're not required to touch the data all the time? So, at the risk of repeating myself again and again, encryption. And now we're talking about identity access management. And what that means is encoding in the package how you want it treated, who's allowed to use it, what the keys are to unlock it, the handling environment. So you were describing the environment where it's allowed to work, so that if you're using a tool to unpack it, you can now embed data, metadata generally, to describe how you want that data to be used. So if we're going to be collaborating, we need to be able to put this in a common space and describe what that common space looks like. How much control do we need of that space? It depends how sensitive the data is. And if we want to trace the data and make sure that there's a log that can't be changed, maybe we actually do use blockchain. Blockchain is not just the buzzword of the week. It's actually a useful tool. So now if we're creating a packaged economy, so to speak, we need to partner with the people that create the tools. So think of something like, I don't know, Autodesk Maya, so visual effects tool. So if I'm a studio that depends on visual effects, I want to be able to send them the data, send them the model, send them things that will give them seeds of things to work on. But they need to be able to unpack it in a way that they can use it in their tool, but only in their tool. So if you get Autodesk to say, oh, we've got the unpacking tool, we're going to be able to build ways to interpret the certs, facilitate the identities, unencrypt the data, and ingest the system into our system, into Autodesk Maya, for instance. So then Autodesk Maya would process the data that came from the package, perhaps in a protected environment, because we asked them to. And then, of course, you need to go the other direction where you need to be able to repackage the data. So they will create a new cert, encode all of the stuff that says, okay, send it back to the studio and export it to repackage the data. Now think about that cycle. You don't care who's on the other side if you are describing the person that, or the party that is able to work on your data. If you've said, okay, I'm only going to let, Bob at XYZ, uh, visual effects company use it, then Bob gets the key, Bob ingests it into Autodesk Maya or whatever his favorite tool is that can interpret all of this stuff because he's got the credentials, and can work with it. So we don't need to worry about what the network looks like in sending it to them. And guess what? We're already doing this kind of thing. We're already packaging data by sending DCPs. We've been doing that for years. We package it up, we send it to the theater. But the DCPs are often encoded so that only that one projector can use it, or that one theater can use it. So if you send that same DCP to a theater down the street, they won't be able to use it because they don't have the keys, they don't have the access, all of that. So it's not a new concept, but now we need to think about the workflows into the cloud, or into the wild, I should say. So kind of using that package philosophy, now we're actually on the cusp of this, where we're doing just-in-time processing as we're delivering it. Think about what workflows that would be really handy to have. Things like localization and translations, creating subtitles on the fly, just like we're doing over there. And then delivering it to people that may be an underserved market, and they may get a feature that's translated because we're using things like AI tools to translate the original text, package it, put it into DCP, and deliver it to the theater. Pretty cool, right? And it turns the traditional way we've been doing it on its head. But guess what? We're already there. Okay. I'm going to talk about AI. My studio says I'm not allowed to talk about AI, so I'm not talking about AI. But guess what? We can use AI as a security tool to determine uh, a confidence score that says, hey, we may not have created a key for an individual, but we can say it's only allowed to be used within this one IP address range, or this domain from a country, or this one company that's registered with a third party, or any number of things where an AI tool can basically say, oh, I've got all the components to be able to unpack the package, and then it will generate a key and allow you to unpack the package. So you can use AI tools for good instead of evil. One of the things that I kind of caution everybody is that AI is the new buzzword, but it's not always appropriate. Do we need that intelligence? Do we need that learning to be able to do what we need to do? Part of the big problem and the big challenge for me as a security guy is, where's my data going? Is my data being ingested into an AI learning engine and then used against me? That's where it's being used for evil. Do we need AI for a lot of this stuff when simple heuristics or simple algorithms may be enough? So ask yourself that when you're evaluating AI tools. Is it the right tool for the job? Um, yeah, I'm starting to run out of time, so I don't want to go too far past this, but yeah, I'll skip the last couple of bullets on that one. So the new exhibition space, Obviously, we've got theaters with new technologies. We've got two-way streaming, where now, as you're delivering it, you're getting some telemetry back from the people that are viewing it. We've got virtual reality, augmented reality, live event venues like the Sphere. Isn't that the coolest thing? Has anybody who's been in the Sphere? Is that the coolest thing? Um, Gaming, mobile, embedded displays. What about things like implants? Implants. That's, well, one of my heroes, Ray Kurzweil, he's a technology visionary. He's invented many things. Um, a few years ago, he said, hey, direct brain implants will allow users to fully immerse in virtual reality without external equipment. What a cool vision. Nobody I know would do that. Nobody. Do you want something implanted in your brain? Surgery people kind of tend to shy away from. Next. So, well, maybe not. What about things like Google Glass, or Apple Vision Pro, or stereo 3D, or high frame rate? These are things that, I hate to say it, most of this is flash in the pan. Maybe not 3D. That comes back every 10 years and everybody's enamored with it, and then it goes away again. Next. So, being kind of quick about this, what are the things that people resist and why? So for Google Glass, well, it's just ugly. Look at the guy wearing Google Glass. I have a friend that used to call those guys glass holes. In the case of Apple Vision Pro, it's too expensive. 3D is often uncomfortable. Resource limitations for high frame rate and data management and all that stuff. In terms of implants, me as a security guy, I want to be able to go, done, right? And of course, security is one of the things that I always preach. So, so I only have this and one more slide. How do we ensure we don't suffer the same fate as the music industry? So, maintain your control of your data up until the point of delivery. And then once it's in the wild, once it's been unpacked, once it's been delivered, make your money on that initial delivery and then call it good. Because otherwise, if you're trying to control your data while everybody is trading it, it's a losing battle. I can tell you that as somebody that's been fighting it for 40 years. Yeah, next. Oh, I lied. I have one more after this. Obviously, if you're investing in technology, I preach encryption, data package strategy, identity access management, and digital certificates, and partner with the software companies. So, thinking about this, there's a big push in the industry to create kind of what we would want as our movie making nirvana environment. And then I hesitate to call it by name, but the Movie Labs 2030 vision is this way of operating in zero trust environments and doing all of this stuff. The problem, as I see it, is that the architecture is beautiful, but there's no roadmap to get there. So, me being an incrementalist, don't be an underpants gnome. Don't figure out what's in between. Don't just assume you're going to have this architecture and you're going to get profit. Make incremental investments. Be realistic about the resistance to adoption. Be ready to examine your fundamentals. And then you make the profit. And do it all securely. So, thank you.